Imagine cold calling all day. Today, I just wanted to briefly talk about just a career in sales. Whether you're someone that's considering it, or you're already in it, trying to evaluate things. Been in sales career paths for a little over a year, and ultimately, I haven't gotten to like management or VP level or C-suite, definitely, or anything like that. But just as a super basic B2B seller, just wanted to go over just some things like positives and negatives that I've experienced and that I've seen, and just like general things that I think that everybody should be aware of when they're entering a career path in sales, so you can make an informed decision. I was a full cycle seller at AT&T, and then I spent nearly a year over at Outreach, just being an SDR. So I never did the closing side of things, although full cycle, I got a little bit of exposure to that. So ultimately, like I've learned a lot, and I kind of changed the trajectory of my career, and I no longer want to do sales, but I've learned so much that I think is valuable for those that either want to continue doing sales or think that this is what they want to do when they leave college, or also help those of you that may be on the fence and might need a reason to to go a completely different direction. If you can find this out earlier, the better. This is obviously assuming that you have a base level knowledge about a career in sales. How it generally works is most companies, they usually give you like commission on top of your salary, right? Commission is based on your quota, so reaching quota and then also over exceeding it, things like that. Some companies have a cap on that. But you are usually in a lot of different B2B environments, you're cold calling. Sometimes it's in person, right? Sometimes it's a mix of both. It could be on Zoom sometimes, especially if you're running meetings, if you're in the full cycle version of that, or if you're in AE. So just make sure you're also paying attention to like what type of sales role it is. So I mentioned, obviously AE, SDR, closing, things like that. It's important to pay attention to like what type of seller you are, what stage of the process you're in, and then also if you're full cycle or not. That'll inform certain different skill sets that you need to do well. So SDR, those are generally you're creating leads. You're cold calling from scratch. You have no rapport with this person, trying to essentially get them into a meeting. In AE, you're running the meeting, right? You're in charge of most of the deal cycle. You're running meetings, demos, follow-up, all that stuff after the SDR books that for you. And also probably doing a little bit of prospecting yourself, because SDR is not enough. In some cases, you're gonna want additional leads that you've also found. And then closing is just obviously closing a deal. You've already been through the process. You're taking care of the final steps of the process to finally close that deal and get everything done. So that's what appealed to me about sales when I first started out. It's just like there's so many different opportunities, right? And not only that, it's just like it's so high risk, high reward, just the energy, right? This is like I was like super pumped up finishing up my last couple years at Purdue, and I was just like, I knew sales is what I wanted to do for a little bit. I wanted to just like build that expertise and being able to sell stuff to people, right? And creating value and just learning what problems like business leaders have, and then just like giving them solution for their problems, right? And just learning about that process, I think, is important, especially if you open up your own business, or even if you're just for a basic career. No matter what you're doing, even in life, like you're always selling something, right? Like you're always selling, like say like your personality to others or your human capital to a company, right? Selling is important. So whether you want to do it as a career or not, the basic skills I think are super important. It's worth evaluating. But that's sales in a nutshell. Again, I'm not here to make a decision for you. That really is for you, because sales isn't for everybody. I realized a year and a half in that it's not for me. Although, I really enjoyed my time with Outreach specifically and made a lot of money with them. So this video is to give you a rundown of just the positives and the negatives you can expect in sales if you do decide to go through it. So let's go ahead and get right to it towards the positives. Obviously, incredible pay. You cannot beat commission. Just the idea of having a commission on top of your base salary is just a beautiful incentive. It depends on the company. You obviously want to work for a company that really does reward you and make sure those quotas are attainable, therefore the commission's attainable, right? You're not getting screwed out of that. Very important to work for a company that sets realistic quota requirements. As an SDR, I got paid out on something called a SAL, Sales Accepted Lead. which was essentially just like a lead that I found that ran with like a meeting with an initial meeting with the AE and became a sales qualified lead. They ended up moving forward in the process. Even if they didn't necessarily close, they just decided to move forward from that initial meeting, and you got a payout from that. It was awesome. And again, every company might do things a little bit different, but definitely look into that. I think that a lot of careers, especially initially, sales will pay you a lot more coming out of college, just because of the nature of the work, the way that the commission salary kind of ratio is set up. You'll get a little bit less salary, but with the commission, everything in total kind of ends up being a lot more than an initial base salary at any other job that isn't sales right out of college. So it's just, you can make a lot of money. The other thing that you really get from a career in sales, especially if you're struggling with this like day to day, if you need something that can really just like bring that out in you, communication and confidence, right? This is something that everybody has to some level, right? To some base level. Everybody has it, but you really perfect it in sales. You really learn how to communicate succinctly. I can't pronounce that right. I am so sorry. you really, so, okay, maybe there are some areas where I still suck at, but either way, you learn how to communicate certain things properly and quickly, effectively, both through emails, text, messaging, and then also on the phone, calling, and in person, right? Depending on what the situation is like, what the selling situation is like. You learn how to articulate properly, how to create value with less words, and I think that's super important. Sometimes you always have different types of sellers. I tend to talk a lot more than some, but ultimately there's a lot of lessons I still picked up. It's about talking a little bit less. You may be surprised I used to talk more than this, but ultimately, it's a huge thing that you get. And then through that, you're cold calling, you're talking to strangers constantly, and you get a huge confidence boost through that. Like, there's nothing, in my mind, there's no other career that's going to be able to beat that high that you get when you get off the phone with the prospect and, you had a great conversation, you booked a meeting. It's just, it's beautiful because you earned it, you got it. The other big benefit I would really say is just you work with really great people. People that have a work hard, play hard mentality, and sometimes in some cases that Wolf of Wall Street stereotype of the type of people you're with is kind of true in terms of just like the energy and stuff like that. Don't worry about like the drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. I mean, if they do that, they do it on their own time. It doesn't affect you at work. Other jobs that I've had that aren't sales, like mostly like in college and high school and things like that, I've never seen this much like camaraderie between, say, like your boss, your team, just everybody, because like you're working with, again, people that really understand people, right? That's your job as a seller, is to understand people and their problems, provide a solution, right? Just to generally be a good human being, assuming the company is doing sales correctly. Your job is to provide value, not necessarily shoehorn a product or service into someone's life. So ultimately, you're working with good people, that have goals themselves, tons of high energy, tons of focus. Like it's just a beautiful, like rewarding environment to be in. I know my particular team at Outreach, like we all cared, like we were all in the grind together, and we just all felt that, just in the trenches. Our manager would literally get down like some days and call with us, like, because he didn't have to, but it's just, he's a good human being. He understands, like, people in a good sales culture don't get to the top and stay there and like just like and create unrealistic quotas and all this work for their team, right? So it was just a great environment, and especially a great environment to network. Two last big positives that I definitely wanted to touch on is just, again, lots of big options. We already went into the differences between SDR, AE, closer. There's I'm sure a couple other ones out there that I'm forgetting, and then there's full cycle selling. You have tons of different options, and you can do whatever that you're good at, right? Some people, I know a guy right here in Seattle. He moved to a company where he does full cycle selling from Outreach because he prefers the full cycle process. He prefers to be at every part of the deal. There's someone like myself, I prefer to focus on one specific part and get really, really good at that. So there's different opportunities for different people, and that's the best part. And then finally, you get to talk to business leaders and understand their problems if you're in a correct sales structure. So if you're just cold calling random people, I'm sorry, please go work at another company, because I've been at a company like that and it sucks. You're not getting any value, and it's a waste of time for both you and the company. And it's a waste of money. So when you're at, say, I was at Outreach, for example, a lot of my conversations were with literally, like, at the lower small business level, was with owners of those businesses. And at the large business level, enterprise accounts, literally talking to VPs and C-suites, and it's scary at first, but you realize they're just like other human beings. I mean, they're humans, right? Like, they just have different sets of problems, and it's your job to really understand those problems and help solve them and gain that exposure. And again, just building up your network, but also just building up your business expertise. I mean, what other career really lets you to understand and talk to directly like a VP and a C-suite leader's thinking, like what their top of mind initiatives are, and just what a bigger, larger overall goal is for a company outside of just conducting day-to-day business. So it's just so fun to pick leaders' brains. Even if they hang up on you, that's time that not everybody gets, but you just got. So those were all the big positives. There's quite a lot of them. I did want to move on to the negatives because I think that it's definitely important to kind of just be aware of these things because it can get very taxing. So I mean, that is the first point in itself. It's very taxing. It's high risk, high reward. Just the year and a half that I've been working in sales, it really just felt like I had no life outside of work. It just, even if on the days where I didn't put in too many hours or the days that I did, it didn't matter. It was just, work was always on your mind because you have a quota that you're constantly trying to reach every single month, and it can get obviously just very, very taxing. It's the whole mentality of just really, what have you done for me lately, right? You have the risk of constantly being fired if you don't hit and, sometimes in some cases exceed quota, which is sometimes expected, especially at a smaller company. So it really just depends on how you do under pressure and how you kind of handle pressure. And honestly, if you think that you can really, really just keep up that energy and that just commitment for years and years on end, right? That you need to be in sales and even as a manager, and when you become, team lead, manager, no matter what it's called, and when you even get to the VP C-suite level, you have numbers you have to reach, right? No matter what. So that doesn't just go away after you spend a year or something in a lower level sales role and kind of move up. Especially if you're a good sales leader, numbers are always going to matter. And you just have to kind of be comfortable with that. So I know not everybody is. I certainly wasn't near the end, and I really started to burn out. So just really, if you're already watching the video, you're out there, you're doing the research, you're kind of already doing what you need to understand the career. Before you kind of hop into it. Just two last things that I kind of wanted to touch on. Sometimes you do need to figure stuff out for yourself. There's no real set method for success, right? You don't have a gap in accounting for sales. Now, there's definitely different selling methods and certain things that you can emulate and just kind of follow general strategies. And obviously, you can refine your talk track. You can always improve certain areas. But at the end of the day, when it comes to finding the right people to sell to and just really closing deals and getting to your quota, there's never going to be a set method that's going to set you up for success every single month on end. So you could just do that and essentially automate it like a lot of other jobs. In this case, you're always going to be doing a little bit of problem solving, always finding the right people to sell to, always looking for new opportunities and new markets to penetrate. You're always going to be essentially looking for that next deal and trying to create opportunities out of thin air. And I know not everybody's comfortable with that, especially putting your career and bills and all that stuff kind of on the line. So it is a little tough. Just be wary of that. The last thing wasn't so much of an issue for me, but I wrote this down because I think it's worth mentioning. I know a lot of folks out there are definitely this is definitely a big factor when they're looking for jobs, but there is, in a lot of sales cultures, just a lack of diversity, and not just the ones I've been at. Honestly, a lot of the ones I've applied to, interviewed with, and just overall seen. It's not quite Wolf of Wall Street level, don't worry. But a lot of these companies, if you haven't seen some of the videos I've kind of put up just talking about companies that I've been at, I'm just going to kind of start fresh. Ultimately, you'll see a lot of people from Greek life, which is totally fine. A lot of my friends are in Greek life or have been associated with it at some point in time. So I hold nothing against that, but I think that there's no real depth and kind of personality type that a lot of sales cultures recruit, because obviously they want someone that's super outgoing, super energetic, just out there constantly, right? You won't see a lot of introverts in sales. You won't see just a lot of, and I have to say this, just non-white males, and even in some cases, you won't even see a lot of females in sales, which was definitely the case at one particular company I was at. So it's just tough, I know, for a lot of different demographics to really feel like you can succeed, just because if you're obviously not a white male, there's you won't necessarily see somebody that looks like you in a position of power, right? Like you won't see someone that's made it. You might see a couple people, but it's mostly just white males, and it's mostly the same exact personality type. So usually, again, for a lot of people, it's not a big deal, but I know there's a huge like kind of demographic out there that does care about that. Actually, there's a lot of demographic out there, but it is a big factor for a lot of people. So I just thought I'd mention that. Usually, it's not a bad thing. These are all great people. There's so much you can learn, and again, just I hate to say it, but assimilating to the culture isn't as bad as it sounds. But I know some people will definitely have an issue with that, so thought I'd mention it. Anyways, y'all, those are the positives and negatives. I just wanted to break that down and keep it like super simple for folks out there that are evaluating a career in sales and have no exposure to it like I did. Really just, and when it comes down to a final verdict, if you're willing to sacrifice for high risk, high reward, you will be well rewarded, especially if you work for a very good company. And this is beyond just your salary and your commission. You'll get so many opportunities, and it's just the career growth and personality growth, and so you'll see so much because of it. And even though I left kind of the sales industry, for me, like I've learned so much. I don't see it as wasted time because it just like upped my level of just like knowledge in business and communication, which is just amazing. The flip side is really just if you don't necessarily want work to take up your whole life or don't do well under pressure, definitely consider something else. I'm telling you, this is not the career path you want to be in. If there's a sales culture out there that says work-life balance, know that that's just there to make the job more appealing. A true sales role, if it's done right, and unfortunately that's the way it is, it's the way it's set up, the work-life balance is always going to be off. And you can certainly do well. Some people can really easily do well in 30 hours, 40 hours, right? But often near the end of the month, it gets very grindy, and it's just worth keeping that in mind. And if you're someone that definitely doesn't do well in that type of environment, choose something else. So that was it. Anyways, y'all, that's the video. I still have to read this thing because I'm back on YouTube after 2 years. So definitely check out my comeback video if you haven't already, just with other things you can expect on this channel. Let me know kind of what you think. Leave some comments. Let's smash that like button. Let's get this video trending higher than your monthly quota in sales. And then just please subscribe if even a fraction of my videos resonate with you. So I'll see everybody in the next one. Peace out.